of Objects, Dunya Noor, and Miss Dr. Itzeya, who is also co-author, I can say?
No.
I think it's all because you will be discussing together. So, and we are so happy to have you this evening. So,
thank you very much.
The field is yours, and I'll come back after once you are done.
Thank you so much.
Have
Thank
a
you
lovely
so much. And thank you everyone for being here for this conversation around the novel of Rana Haddad, The Unexpected Love Object of Dunya Noor, which is a great novel that I'm sure that those of you who haven't read it will absolutely want to read after today's session. This is actually a kind of follow-up conversation because Rana Haddad and myself had a webinar discussion at the end of January as part of the Center for Cultural, Literary and Postcolonial Studies Center at SOAS, University of London. And I'm actually going to, if that's okay, I'm going to put the link to the video in case any of you want to have a look at it and watch it later. So yeah, I'll now introduce Rana, then we'll have a conversation during which we will read some excerpts of the book. We will also play some music, and we'll then open the floor for the questions. By the way, my name is Itzeya Oikole-Amiano, and I'm a researcher at SOAS University of London. I mainly work on the history and literature of the Maghreb or North Africa, and gender and sexuality issues, Islamophobia. As for Rana Haddad, the author of the book, she grew up in Latakia in Syria, then moved to the UK as a teenager and read English literature at Cambridge University. She lived in London and worked as a journalist for the BBC, Channel 4 and other broadcasters. Rana has also published poetry and is currently mostly based in Athens, in Greece. The Unexpected Love Object of Dunya Noor is her first novel and was shortlisted for the Polari First Book Prize and selected as MTV Arabia Book of the Month. She is now working on a novel that will be set in London, which will portray England in a way that it has never been portrayed before. So my first question, Rana, this evening is, could you please give us a brief summary of the book, where it is located, who are its main characters, so that we get a bit familiar, become familiar with the novel?
Yes, of course. So the novel is set in, it starts in the 1970s, between the 1970s and 1990s. It's a coming-of-age story for the character of Dunya Noor, who grows up in Latakia, which is a city on the coast of Syria. And she's the very rebellious child, but she rebels in very small ways that you wouldn't even consider maybe so rebellious. But in that environment at that time, it was considered quite shocking, everything she did. Because Syria was under a dictatorship, and also families, there was a very strong hierarchy in families. And it's still like that, but you know, every few decades backwards, it's worse. So she was a free spirit in the literal sense of that word. And this caused a lot of drama. A lot of the drama in this novel is based on that. There's a lot of characters, but the three main characters who I would describe as a revolutionary in this novel is also Hilal Shihab, who is an astronomer. I mean, he's studying to be an astronomer from Aleppo, and also Suha Habibi, who's a wannabe singer, who's very, very talented, but who's forbidden from singing and has to hide her voice and then find it. So between those three, I tell a story of many things, but those three are rebelling and finding their own selves through this story. So yeah. And also the other thing, the book, although it is a romantic story and it's coming of age, it's also written in quite a comic and satirical way. I deal with, I show the idea of an innocent soul or a child laughing against tyranny. So the child, Dunya, threatens, people bigger than her just through laughter or saying little small words, no, or saying little sentences. That's enough to completely destabilize people. So that theme runs through the book.
Yeah, it certainly does. Actually, that's why the title of the event of today suggests that, as the book suggests, love and humor are actually revolutionary. And I would like to read an excerpt of the book to give you a flavor of how this humor plays out, and then maybe Rana, you can comment a little bit more on how love and humor are revolutionary. The God disorder afflicted Syrian fathers in the main, not only Joseph, who is Dunya's father. It struck as predictably as a major type of flu might a couple of years after a Syrian man's wife turned into a mother by giving birth to at least one child, a son preferably. The father in question would often start to show symptoms of the disorder as soon as his child or children began to display any signs of independent thought or action. Soon enough, the tendency would develop into a full-blown condition where the father in question would become convinced that the proper powers and functions of father in a family setting should mirror the powers and functions of God. Version 0.1 Old Testament with regard to humanity. This implied that their paternal powers included judgment, punishment, reward, as well as supernatural powers such as seeing into the future, also known as prophecy.
Yeah, this is just a way of setting up the character of Dr. Joseph Noor, who's her father. But he's just an ordinary, he's been brought up to think, as for thousands of years, not only in Syria, but even in the West before modernity or whatever, that a father needs to be like a little god in the household. Our Father who art in heaven. So the father who is a miniature god also mirrors the tyrant or the dictatorship who's Hafez al-Assad. That's just a microcosm. And such fathers, father of the nation, father of the family, are not allowed to make any mistakes. So even when they make a mistake, you're not allowed to point that out. Everyone has to pretend that they are all-knowing. So in this, I call these types of men in Syria at that time because there is a party called the Ba'ath Party, which means the rebirth party, and that's still the party now in government. It's a one-party state. At that time, they all copied the leader, Hafez al-Assad, who had a very special kind of moustache. The old-fashioned moustaches were twisted like that, but he had a more kind of modern one. And a lot of men in the country copied him and had the same kind of secular, I call it a secular moustache. They were modernizers. They gave lots of freedom to women. Like women were allowed to be in government, were educated. So they did a lot of secular things they came from West, the modern world, but they also expected absolute power. And that creates a lot of opportunities for humor in the novel. And for a child to rebel against it. And yeah, so a lot of the humor comes from that. And it's not made up, the humor is not made up by me. It's actually in these societies, there's a lot of laughter because there's a lot of duplicity. That you have to pretend to respect somebody or to think they're amazing. You have to pretend it, because otherwise you could even go to prison if it looks like you don't think that. But behind this mask of admiration, people are laughing all the time, from the children to the teenagers to the adults, and that's throughout the book.
Absolutely. And also, like, I guess humor has within it different shades as well, right? So there's even in the book, like the excerpt that I've just read is quite ironical. And so talking about the God disorder of Syrian fathers is also a way of mocking, right? This clear entitlement and like this power as well of fathers, and mocking them and turning things
Yes,
upside
yes,
down, right?
yes. No, I use satire because also, in a way, if you are right, if you really are wise, if you really are knowing, people would respect you naturally. You don't need to force them to respect you. It's only if you are wrong most of the time that you have to force people to pretend you're right. That's why there's a lot of irony throughout.
Absolutely.
That's it. So, and I think tyrants, because they are insecure, fear laughter. So laughter is a weapon, I think. It's the most powerful weapon, to laugh at them. The other part that in the book, that's the theme that's running throughout the book, apart from laughter, is love, and how love is a threat often to the social order. So every single person, including a child, let's say we start with Dunya, if she decides, as she did, that she will follow her own heart in everything, rather than following someone's orders, that she will fall in love with whoever she wants to fall in love with, that she will pursue her. She decides to become a photographer, which is considered very unladylike, especially for a little girl like that. If she decides to continue following her heart, she's naturally going to go against the social order and has to pay a price. So the book is also telling you the story of that. And also, not only that, she's not only shocking people around her, but in the end, by following her heart more and more, by getting into the habit of following her heart, she even shocks herself. And that's what you need. Because in order to follow your heart, you need courage. And the book is also about courage and about discovery. Because nobody, not the father, not the child, nobody knows anything or many things. We need to be exploring. And in a tyrannical system, you're not allowed to explore. The truth is fixed. And this character is more Dunya, and the other two, Hilal and Suha, are more artists. They're not tyrants. And an artist or a scientist, Hilal is a scientist, explore. So it's a kind of story of a spirit that wants to explore against a system that does not want you to explore, just toe the line and obey. Of course, the free spirit in the end wins. It has to. If it has to pay a price, but it has to pay a price. So,
and I have, sorry.
No,
go on.
No,
I was going to say it's true that it's set in Syria in a time in which there is a dictatorship but I think it's very relatable, because in the end, unfortunately, I think social conventions and the cultural norms that are there and that everyone expects you to follow exist everywhere. And so as such, this kind of oppression, although in different degrees, maybe in different times, in different places, but I think there's something about precisely this search for our own selves, for our truth, for our willingness to follow our heart, that is quite universal, although I don't believe in universals, but I think, you know, the essence of it is very true everywhere.
Yes, I mean, even in this book, because Dunya at the age of 13 is exiled to England because she does something, she goes too far and she has to be kicked out of the country for 10 years, then she returns. But in England, even though there isn't a dictatorship, you know, politically, she also finds it very oppressive. Because as you said, every culture has its own oppressive expectations, which seem normal to the majority, but sometimes an innocent person, like a child or a foreigner, can see that it's not normal. Yeah, so you're right. But for example, now if we're going to talk about love as a revolution, I have a lot of passages, but I've chosen here a passage where Dunya, when she was a child with her friend, are told by her friend's grandmother how to think about love, how a sensible person must think about love. It was around that time that Maria Ghazi's half-blind grandmother, Anais, invited Maria and Dunya over for one of her regular preaching sessions and announced the following: I want to explain to you the truth about boys. It is a universal truth, and whatever anyone else tells you, don't believe them. Listen to me carefully and etch these words in your brains. One day, you might accidentally look at a boy and he will smile at you. If you happen to be stupid enough to smile back at him, he will think you love him. Don't ever let you love him. Boys are arrogant and vain. The boy will then begin to send you letters and slowly try to make you think you are in love with him. Don't ever believe him. Never look a boy in the eyes and never smile at him. Never ever. This is essential advice, my girls. Looking a boy in the eyes is always the beginning of a calamity. If you look at random boys and let yourselves be tricked, the most terrible things will happen. You will become a laughingstock. Even the boy himself will laugh at you and tell all his friends about how he caught you in his trap. Boys like that usually write letters to a number of girls all at once to see which one will answer. These are not letters, they're bait. Boys are hunters and you're their prey. But don't boys fall in love too? Sometimes they do, but most of the time they're lying. Don't ever believe a boy. What about Grandad? How did you fall in love with Grandad? Maria asked. Fall in love? What are you talking about? Marriage is not about falling in love, my child. A sensible girl does not look for such things. No good marriage has ever been built on falling in love. So gradually you see in the book that love is a commodity, that you're supposed to use it within this, like your parents tell you who you fall in love with. You don't tell yourself. That's what a proper girl, even a boy, has to do that most of the time.
Absolutely. Yeah. But again, like in this excerpt in the beginning, this kind of education in gender codes and manners and how we should behave is very relatable, and we are always told that we shouldn't, as girls, let boys think that we are interested, or so there's always this double or all these layers, right, in your novel. And there's it's about Syria, and we learn a lot, and then at the same time it's about how culture functions and how different people navigate it, and these beautiful characters in your novel also, in the end, give a lesson and make other people open up in very unexpected ways.
Yeah. No, definitely this story is not just, it's set in Syria and it does have a lot of elements about Syria, but the truths in it are universal. These kind of the struggles for people to set themselves free are universal, especially people who are artistic and who want to find a very authentic sense of self. In any culture, they will struggle. So I think anyone would relate to that journey that Dunya has. I will here read before she has any romantic interests, which the book will be mostly about that later on, will be the first non-romantic love that she has, which is against expectations. Chapter 4, First Love. When Dunya fell in love for the first time, the object of her undying love and affection raised many eyebrows. It had never been heard of before, nor considered possible, that an 8-year-old girl could fall in love with a camera. It just wasn't normal. She'd been absent-mindedly walking with her mother when she glimpsed the window display of the only photography shop in Latakia, Studio Maurice. Dunya froze where she stood, forcing the bewildered Patricia to stop too. She looked at the black metallic machines that lay demurely there, wasting away, and settled her gaze on an antique-looking Kodak camera. The shop owner, Maurice, warned her that it was an old-fashioned model and that one couldn't use it for taking quick snaps, but promised her that if she bought it, he would teach her its secrets. Buying this particular type of camera, he said to her, was like buying an oud, but instead of playing with musical notes, one needed to learn how to play with light. It is a box of light, a machine that can see. If you buy it, I promise to teach you its secrets, he told her. And so photographer Maurice explained to Dunya how her camera was no ordinary camera, but an instrument of light.
Beautiful. I really love this also play with the light, which Dunya learns how to do with a camera, because in the end it's also a metaphor for what she's doing, right?
Yes, it's light and truth, pursuit of light and pursuit of truth to the end. So you find out. Now, because we wanted to, there's a lot of song and music throughout the book, and I wanted to play a song by the Egyptian diva Kulthum about love, and it describes a woman who's weighed down by tradition and afraid of love. It's called The Story of Love.
طول عمري للحب وسرت الحب وظلم الحب.
Okay, yes. This song is very, very long. We were just going to play a small amount of it. She was, I mean, even though she's Egyptian, she's the voice, she's called the Planet of the East, Kulthum. And in this book, as we will see later, music and the idea of women singing, which is actually, in the Middle East, very strange because it's both forbidden, but it's also celebrated at the same time. Some of the most loved, I mean, Kulthum was on the stamps of Egypt, you know, and she was called the mother of Egypt. She was like the voice of the land. But often her idea of love, which is, you know, is that love is suffering, love is forbidden, love is sad. And I contrast that in the book. I show this weight of tradition about love. I mean, it's not only the Middle East, because love makes you suffer, or it can. So we see this weight of love as something idealized but terrifying and probably best to be avoided or taken in small measure, manageable portions of it. Or somebody who is not so moderate and just throws themselves into its arms. So that's this. In this book, we see those two attitudes.
Yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about Kulthum later. But it's true that you truly reflect the atmosphere and mindset of Syria through language, although you're writing in English, because there is a flavor of Arabic rhythm and metaphor in the tone and the texture that you use, and you have infused the book with important elements of both Arabic and Syrian culture, like astronomy, as you briefly mentioned when summarizing the book, is very much present. Storytelling as well, and the figure of the Hakawati or the storyteller, poetry and music. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes. The most amazing thing about the Arabic language is, every language is very beautiful, but there's something in Arabic, I don't know what it is, that's very, very poetic. The meaning goes very deep. And people in Syria, for example, but in many countries, very ordinary people are really connoisseurs of language, and they love language. They're interested in poetry. It's not something elitist. And in this book, and also I show, a boy like Hilal, who grows up the son of a tailor, an ordinary boy, writes poetry, then decides to become a scientist. His vision of science is very poetic. And in Syria at that time, there was no such thing as astronomy, even though the Arabs were pioneers in astronomy and had discovered many things, especially about the lunar calendar, about navigation. It was the main thing. But in the modern, like say in the 1970s, 1980s, a little boy would not imagine that he'd become an astronomer. But Hilal decides he's going to do that. And his view of it is both scientific and poetic, because he's also a poet. He's a poet and a scientist. And the same with Dunya. She's interested in the camera, but her interest in this machine is also very poetic and metaphoric. And then we have the character of Nijm, the storyteller, who's a storyteller and a musician and a philosopher about love. And then Suha, the talented singer, daughter of a baker who can only sing in secret. So through these four people, we hear a lot of poetry, and also there is something very important in the book. There's one song that actually influenced me. I didn't realize it. There's a beautiful song by Abdul Halim al-Hafiz, who's an Egyptian singer, and the lyrics were written by a Syrian poet called Reader of the Coffee Cup. And it's a very beautiful poem. It's striking. The words alone, if you just read it, are incredible. But set to song by Abdul Halim al-Hafiz, it's amazing. So I use that song as the center of the book, even the plot, because we have a coffee cup reader. But it's all done in a metaphoric and lyrical way.
Yeah. Did you want to play Abdul Halim Hafiz or read?
Maybe, do you want to read that
Sure.
bit that you wanted to read?
Sure. I also wanted to say that this division between science and poetry is also so meaningless and modern, and in a way, as the characters in your novel, also historically, science as like understanding like in its meaning of like astronomy and like pure hard science, and philosophy, the humanities, poetry, literature have been linked, because in the end we cannot separate them. So it's really beautiful that not only do you refer to like historical astronomy as being something that is very much part of Arab history, but also this mixture of disciplines as being what these characters embody.
Yes, everything. I mean, in this book, what I only realized at the end when I finished it that everything in the book was about how opposites are the same thing. That it's actually including science and poetry, and many other things you will see in the book. That we think something is the opposite, but actually it's part of us. And without this thing, which we cut away from, we're broken. We're not who we should be. And yeah, so Hilal is almost like a Renaissance scientist, like Leonardo da Vinci or someone like that, in that era when the scientists were poets. And I kind of think romantically, I think the scientists should be like this again.
Hopefully. I don't know. I feel we are getting more and more compartmentalized, but it's true. I as you know, I work on the history of North Africa, and the manuscripts that I have worked on. There's everything together in one manuscript. There's poetry, and then there's astronomy, and then there's what we call magic, and then there's chronicles, and then there's history, and
That's it. Like Hilal is always writing poetry, and his equations are written in a poetic way. And in the past, when you read these old manuscripts, they were written in calligraphy, and there was like gold, drawings, and they looked like pieces of art. Each page of a theory was a piece of art in the East and the West, in the Renaissance, in medieval times in Europe, also in the Middle East. So I bring that into the book. I'm trying to show that the masculine and the feminine, again, are not as opposite as you think. Like, for example, Hilal, we don't want to tell all the plot, but he's masculine, but not in the way that, for example, the society would think. That he's not a warrior, he's more of a dreamer. Or, I won't elaborate. But maybe if you would like to read the bit about when Suha, the daughter of the baker, discovers that she wants to sing, and then the song from Abdul Halim, which later we will play. That's at the center of this.
Sure.
My inspiration.
Yeah. Suha got up from her armchair and brought over her portable cassette player. She picked out from her bookcase a tape whose cover was a black and white photograph of a melancholy young man with a beautiful face, pitch black straight hair, and a side parting. His name, Abdul Halim Hafiz. She pressed the play button. She sat, and there was sadness in her eyes. Staring at my turned up coffee cup, she said, "My boy, don't be sad. My boy, don't be sad, for love is your destiny. Love is your destiny. I have gazed into the future many times. I have looked into the stars, but I've never read a coffee cup like yours before. I've never known a sadness like yours before. My boy, my boy."
Yeah. So before we play that song, I just want to read something about, because Suha basically is in Aleppo. When Dunya arrives to Aleppo, this is when she enters the world of song and poetry to a higher degree than she'd ever experienced it before. And there is something quite strange about Aleppo, and I will describe it from Dunya's point of view when she arrives there. The city was far too strange and far too mysterious, much stranger and more mysterious than any other city Dunya had ever set foot in. She felt as if a deep and eternal song filled it, a song that had begun before the world was born, a song that never stopped being sung and had never been interrupted. It was a silent song, but everywhere she went, she imagined she could hear it. Its beat was that of a heartbeat, its melody that of a sigh, and its shape that of a beautiful young woman who loved to dance, both day and night, regardless of whether it was dark or light, and who did not care a fig whether anyone was watching. And what is strange about Aleppo, it is one of the oldest continuously inhabited cities in the world. I think Damascus and Aleppo, maybe Damascus a little bit older, but Aleppo is also continuously inhabited, the oldest. And also I think that one of the first songs ever discovered on tablet was in Aleppo, or from that part of the world. And when you are there, I don't know if, because I didn't grow up in Aleppo, I grew up in Latakia, which has a lot of magic. But in Aleppo, I remember when I arrived there the first time, and the second and the third, you can feel, even if there's no music, you can hear the music. It's a very strange feeling. You can hear it as if the whole city is singing in a strange way. It has like a heartbeat feeling of a song, and a very old one. And before the war, it was the center of music in Syria, and some of the best musicians that you can imagine were based there, who played all types of instruments and amazing songs, both ancient and modern and so on. But anyway, those musicians, the Syrian ones, were also influenced by the world of Arab song is all linked. So Abd al-Halim al-Hafiz and was playing in every home, and a child like Suha would have heard him. So now we're going to play that song, which, I mean, the song itself is more than an hour, but we're only going to play a short extract.
Yeah, can I just say before that, I've just put a link to the Wikimedia in case people want to have a look at the map of Syria and see where these cities that you're mentioning, Rana, are located, Aleppo, Latakia, just so that people can become more familiar with the geography.
Yeah, Latakia is on the coast.
Please, Raphael, could you please put the maps? Latakia is on the Mediterranean Sea.
Yes.
It's a lovely place.
Yeah.
And Aleppo is a little bit inside, and it's a lovely place as well.
Yes.
I think there is a problem maybe with the map.
Can you not see the links in the chat?
I think Raphael is working on it. Here it is.
Right.
Yeah. Now, so Latakia, it's the north of Lebanon.
Yes, it's north of Beirut. Here, it's in
Oh my God, I'm nostalgic now, Rana.
Have you been there, Suha?
My origins are Lebanese.
Oh yes, Lebanon, definitely. But have you been to Syria?
Oh yeah, many times.
Oh yes, yes.
Yeah, lovely country.
Yes, it is lovely.
Yeah, and you have the Crac de Chevalier.
Crusader Castle, yeah.
Yeah.
There's all types of layers of history.
Oh, lovely. Mm.
Alep here is the French word for Aleppo. It's in the north of the city.
There is Zawr, Tadmor, Damascus, of course, and Saidnaya is in Syria, close to Damascus, no?
Yes, that's a very old, ancient monastery.
Exactly.
Some of the first churches in the world, because Christianity started biblical Syria, much bigger than this. So some of the first churches are in Syria, and also even nowadays there are still churches that pray and villages that speak in Aramaic, which is the language.
Oh yeah.
So when you are there, you can feel all of that.
Oh yeah.
You can feel the time. it's
Really, I'm nostalgic now, Rana.
I mean, it's sad because, I mean, if we go back, I haven't been back since the war. So 10
Oh.
years. Last time was 2010. And I'm scared, you know, when we go back, it'll be more wounded, of course.
Yeah.
So
Imagine.
I
Yeah.
know it's going to come, it will return because it's a nation or part of the world that has thousands of years. It's existed for thousands and thousands, and there has been many, many wars and earthquakes and all kinds of things have happened, and then people always come back. The culture is too deep.
Mm-hmm.
It'll always reinvent itself and start again. But, you know, it's still a lot of pain.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of beauty. And in my book, you see the pain and you see the extraordinary beauty of that country, which is often hidden because when you're in the Western country, and if you haven't been there yourself, you just think nothing. You think it's the access of evil, or you cannot imagine what it is really like unless you're there. Because it's been hidden from view.
Yeah, and it's actually very contaminated with a lot of prejudices and wrong images that we receive from all of what's got to do with the Arab world and with Islam. But the beautiful thing of your book is that precisely you show how people, you know, have agency and have courage, and there's pain. Life is also about, you know, beauty and pain and many other things in between, and we navigate them, and we you know yeah.
I mean, even for example, let's say if you say women are oppressed, which I mean they are, but also they're very, very, very strong. It's not only Dunya. Dunya is just an example of a rebellious, cheeky girl, but there were lots of girls like that in real life all over the Middle East. There are plenty of extremely cheeky girls and also rebellious boys. There's a lot of not everyone is a victim. Some people, and many of them are heroes and innovators, and so my book talks more about that rather than the victim story. But so now we go back to our radio program with all the songs. We will listen.
Yeah, because then eventually we will come to talk about divas, and we'll talk about strong women. So let us listen to.
Now we will listen to this song that's key to the book in a strange way. First, it inspires Suha to sing, and also it's very important for me. When I wrote the book, it was always in the back of my mind. The poetry that was written by a Syrian poet, the rhythm of it, and the mood. So let's listen to a short extract. Okay, so when Suha as a child hears this song, she's struck, and she realizes that she starts to sing it actually, and her mother hears her voice and is alarmed at how beautiful it is. So I will read here an extract about how she feels when she hears that song. Song was her answer. It filled her world with the beginning of meaning and a strange, delightful feeling that was so much bigger than her and larger than her world. Hush, Basma said, stop, stop. And she went and locked the door and closed the windows. I'm like you, I can sing like you, Suha shouted with joy and jumped up and down and ran in circles around her mother and then put her arms around her. My darling, you're not like me. You're much better than me, Basma said gently, but in a very sad voice. I don't want you to sing. It's the worst destiny to be born into. The love of music is a curse. How did you make that oud sing? I want you to show me. Suha stubbornly ignored her mother's words. I can't do that, Basma said. Your father will kill us both. Why? Suha said. When he married me, he made me promise to give up music, and the last thing he'd want is for me to teach it to you. Most men are not like your father, and you'll never find a husband if you sing. No respectable man wants to marry a songbird. Suha begged Basma every day for more than a year to teach her the oud, and she threw a number of tantrums, until in the end Basma gave in. But you must promise me not to sing in front of anyone ever, and you must never nurture a dream of becoming a professional singer. Promise me, my love. I promise, Suha said. If only one could sing silently, then we could do it all day and all night, and no one would be able to stop us. Then we would be happy, wouldn't we, my dove? Basma sometimes said wistfully, observing how happy they both were when they let themselves sing to their heart's content. Why are Fairouz and Kulthum allowed to sing in public and we're not? Suha sometimes asked her mother. How should I know? Basma always answered. By keeping the secret of her beautiful voice hidden and not being allowed to display it, Suha often felt as if she was about to explode. She wished she could scream it out from the rooftops. I'm a singer, listen to my song. But she never did. Neither did she dare to declare that her love of the oud was absolute. Over the years, Basma taught Suha how to hide her musical talent, the way others hid their sins and misfortunes. But she also secretly taught her how to sing like Asmahan and play the oud like Farid al-Atrash.
Beautiful. Yeah, I find Suha a very interesting character. It's very she does find ways to put out her talent. Although I don't want to say too much about the novel, but it's interesting here how she asks her mother why Fairouz and Kulthum were allowed to sing, and then she also mentions Farid al-Atrash and Asmahan, who are a brother and sister artists who were from a Syrian Druze family, and who were exiled sort of in the beginning of the 20th century in Egypt, and kind of revolutionized as well the Cairene and Egyptian and Arabic music and artistic field. Asmahan was a singer and an actress, and Farid al-Atrash played the oud, which you mentioned, and which is a lute type of instrument. And so I find it very interesting that there's these three divas that are mentioned in this excerpt that you've read, Rana. Fairouz, Kulthum, and Asmahan, who are very very important, and at the same time they represent very different things in 20th century Arab imaginary. Like as artists, they have contributed a lot to Arabic music. Kulthum, whom we've heard first, has an amazing voice, and actually it's a bit difficult to explain what her voice does to the listeners, because to those who kind of know Arabic and have been also trained in in Quranic recitation, because it's kind of, she was Kulthum was raised in a village in the Delta in Egypt, and so she learned Quranic recitation, and there is that skill to recite that she puts into music that turns her music into something magical almost, right?
I always think of Kulthum. You can compare her to American gospel music singer. Because a lot of the best American, Black American singers started singing gospel music, which really made their voices very strong when they were children and young adults, and then they go into pop music. She started off because her father was an imam, a religious imam, and she's a girl. Her brothers were supposed to be doing the singing, but they actually dressed her up as a boy. I don't know if you know that, Itzaya. I only discovered that recently, actually. I didn't know that. It's quite strange that they dressed her up when she was still a teenager, so it was possible. They dressed her up as a boy, and they took her from village to village, because these villages were very, very conservative, and you couldn't take a little girl or any girl to sing religious songs. So she was pretending to be a boy, and she has a very strong voice that could be male or female, and she was a celebrity. And then she was taken from village to village, and when she became very, very famous, then people found out that she was a girl, and they accepted it because she had already established herself. And her voice has a quality. That's why she was called the mother of Egypt and also the planet of the East. It was almost like the voice of planet, a planetary voice. She was almost like the voice of the earth, the land. And it was neither male nor female. It was eternal and very powerful. And men, I mean, if you see some of her concerts, you see lots and lots of men sitting, on the floor, smoking hubble bubbles. And apparently they used to also put hash in the hubble bubble. I don't know if it's true and they would sit there for 4 hours, and lots of them would cry. They would listen. It was like therapy. They would listen to her because she takes amazing verses. The words are amazing. And then with the voice and the delivery and the best composers, and she would repeat the song again and again, like waves of an ocean that would wash over you. So it is like therapy. And the sadness, often they are very, very sad songs, but it's very cathartic.
There's actually a video, if I remember well, of a concert that she gave in Paris, where there's one of these cathartic moments in which the public stand up and start cheering, and as Rana says, the songs go on for 3/4 of an hour, 50 minutes, like yes. 50, like 50, not 15. And
so that's like one song. If she sang 2 or 3 songs, it takes the concert would be 4 hours with 3-4 songs.
Yeah. Well, and still nowadays, almost in every city from Morocco to Iraq, you can find her voice in taxis, in cafes, it's just there. So important. So this is Kulthum.
Yes.
And Asmahan as well, like artistically, will play now one of her songs. She was very interesting. Like, she was also vocally impressive in another way, maybe. And she also mixed several musical genres, like Tarab and Baladi and Gharbi, like more like classical, but also modern and popular. So they are very, very interesting artists who have, again, like been contributed enormously and been very creative as well and courageous because they did different things. Not only because they were women, which of course that's a big part as well, and we can talk about this now, but also like artistically, they're amazing. Fairuz was, her operetta performances were so innovative as well.
Yes, I mean, what's important, I mean, it's not important, but I use that in the book with Esmahan and Farid Al-Atrash. It's a brother and a sister. I just refer to them, but they're a brother and sister from Syria, and they come actually from quite an upper class. He's a prince and she's a princess from the Druze kind of sect, which is a kind of very unusual kind of Islam that's mixed with Platonism, mysticism, but they're from south of Syria and they go to Egypt and they become famous because Egypt for music and film was like Hollywood. Everyone goes there from any country. And their music was Eastern, but mixed with Western. So they had some tango, so I refer to them. We will play Esmahan later. Suha is jealous. She wants to be like Esmahan, or she wants to be like, But those divas like Esmahan, Fairuz, and Kulthum represent, you were asking me before that, basically in the morning, everyone, from Iraq to Tunisia, in the mornings they listen to Fairuz, who's Lebanese, Christian, Greek Orthodox. In the night, they listen to Kulthum, who's very, very working class, Muslim, religious, the background. So she's like the deep Orient. Fairuz is almost like Byzantine Arab. And Esmahan is from the Druze, who are considered heretics by some. If you're very strict, you think they're heretics. And they were more upper class aristocracy, and them becoming singers was considered terrible, but they did it anyway. And everyone, once you cross the barrier of outrage, everybody does accept you as these people. You just have to have the courage to cross the barrier of outrage. So yeah, let's play that song by Esmahan, which is influenced by tango. And it was done, I think, around when Egypt was still a British colony, or just after, during that time.
Rana, I wanted to add something about Fairuz. Fairuz, we have to understand that it's her husband's family who pushed her up, the Rahbani, because they used to plagiarize most of the classical music, European classical music, a lot. And they did lots of operette, lots of theaters. It was really wonderful. And of course, Fairuz has the wonderful voice. So she helped them a great deal. I can't hear you. Could you
need to unmute?
Unmute, Rana.
Yes. No, I think you're right. She was very lucky because maybe she was the only diva who was supported. She was this kind of supported by her husband and her brother. But I think they found her because she won. Maybe there was a radio competition or something like that, and they heard her voice. They met her. Then he married her. Then she became part of this team of her husband and his brother, who wrote.
Family.
They were very, very good at writing the lyrics to the song.
Yeah.
Like very prolific, amazing, beautiful words.
Yes.
They wrote.
Yeah,
and
indeed.
Also sang songs like lyrics by Gibran, Khalil Gibran. And also the sound, they used kind of village sounds from Lebanon and the Levant.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Also, they plagiarized European songs, or they used, like with Esmahan, she mixed tango with Arabic. They also mixed Eastern and Western, especially French, I think. Isn't it? Because Lebanon and Syria are very French influenced.
Yeah.
Egypt is more British influenced. This mixture and marriage between East, West, village music, city music, old, it's all very, very rich.
Yeah, exactly. You see, the Rahbani family, her husband, her brothers-in-law, she has also her son, Ziad, who is really a great comedian and a great theater play manager and everything. They are really, really artists, all in the family.
Yes, and you're right. This is very interesting because when a woman becomes a singer, there's always a possibility that she will be seen as a fallen woman. With Esmahan, she had that problem because she had affairs with this, so she was considered a fallen woman. But Fayrouz was married, and her husband and all the men in her family were involved in her creativity, so she was respectable.
Mm.
And then Kulthum was single. She never married. Nobody knew anything about her, but she presented a very respectable image, the way she looked and carried herself in a world that was considered, unrespectable. But she managed to make it a picture of respectability. She knew how to do it.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Better than the other diva, the other Lebanese diva also. We had the Sabah.
Oh, yeah. She was
Sabah.
more crazy.
She was crazy. Mm.
Yeah. Very entertaining, though. Yeah.
Yeah, yes. But
No,
different types. Mm.
Yeah, there's a lot of amazing singers, but those three, for some reason, symbolize something. And then there's a lot more, like Warda Jazairi. I mean, it's a wealth of music, both men and women. But in this book, I mentioned those ones. And then Abdul Halim, who's a man, but he also represents this very gentle and poetic masculinity. That's, it's quite interesting, I think, because in those times, men were, like, for example, now if you see pop music, people are very extreme, like the men are very manly, the women are, like, we're less modern than they were at that time. The women were stronger and the men could be more gentle, and it was fine, because it was more about the quality of the voice and the words, and there was a lot of emphasis on the artistry of music. And that's why these songs are eternal. Like, people listen to them forever. It doesn't matter.
And oftentimes the lyrics are, as you said, poems.
Yes, they're written.
So there's a strong tradition of singing poetry in Arabic, and that also popularized poetry, and it's really beautiful. So don't disappear. Join us. And I wanted to say as well that as you said, Esmahan is kind of the femme fatale. And welcome back.
No, I wanted to leave you by yourself. That's why I didn't want to.
No, come on. And a little bit like, the characters in your novel, she's also she transgresses many of the expectations of how a woman should behave. As you said, Kulthum is remained single, and so of course there's been a lot of talking and rumors about her sexual orientation, but she did kind of preserve a clear aura of respectability, whereas Esmahan not so much. And but at the same time, that allowed to break also with an idea of how women should behave. And there's, for example, I remember in Moroccan feminist Fatma Mernis's fictionalized biography, there's a lot of references to Esmahan and to how they used to listen to her music and then listen to the songs of the women storytellers, the mothers and the grandmothers, and then dream with her and with becoming transgressors as Asmahan. So yeah, they're women that have influenced a lot of generations, I think.
Yes, and there's a story that I find really interesting. Again, it's a rumor, but there is some. I sometimes think Kulthum, she started her career when Egypt was a kingdom under British rule, but then she was singing in a royal Egypt. But then once Egypt became a republic, and Nasser, who's a revolutionary, became the leader, she became the voice of the revolution as well. And she was, because she came from a very simple family, so she was also the voice of the people. She was the voice, from the lowest to the highest, everyone. But she also became almost a little bit like a dictator, in the world of music. That she was the big, like you could have Nasser as the political leader, and she was the musical diva, the leader. And then when Ismahan arrived on the scene, because there were many other singers, but nobody could threaten her rule. When Ismahan turned up, I think there was a big party and Ismahan sang. It was her kind of first time her voice came out. She was not happy. So she was threatened by Ismahan, who was a newcomer. And I think they were like rivals, but it came from Kulthum, who did not like to have, somebody to upstage her, even though they were different. But Ismahan was regarded as a kind of treacherous colonial royalist, because she was from an upper class family and she had some affairs with some of the princes, and she was more Western influenced. So, and then she was also possibly considered a spy and died in mysterious circumstances, which some people say, it could be a joke, I don't know, some people say that Kulthum got her killed, which I don't know if that's true. But and some people say it was possibly a political thing or some romantic. She always had romantic mishaps. But it's interesting how each singer represents like a whole strain of history, as well as poetry. History and poetry.
Well, Kulthum, you mentioned some of her nicknames. Another one is El Haram al-Rabi', the fourth pyramid, which gives also like is quite telling of how big and important she is.
Yes, she was a giant. But what's interesting about these giants is how, because I also talk about that in the book, not only in terms of music, but how when you have somebody extraordinary, like a leader of some kind, how that can become like this person only wants to be the only one. So there's one truth, one leader, one religion, one love, one. And how we can reconcile greatness with also allowing new influences to arrive. So freedom and tyranny and the old and the new. And yeah, I think Ismahan and Kulthum can tell us that story as well.
Are there any questions from the audience? Shall we open the floor, do you think? Or Suha, did you want to mention?
Start with the questions, yeah?
Yes,
Are we
we're
to another song again?
If
Are we
you want
planning another song?
If you would like, I'll tell you, there is a song that I wanted to play, but I'm going to look for it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
We have a question, I think, yeah?
Oh.
Hello? Oh.
Hello?
شكرا لك.
Hello?
Maybe it was the ad from your song, Rana.
Oh. If there is a question, we can answer it, but there was a song that I wanted to play, but then I took it away, but we can return it, which is the Syrian national anthem from the 70s. Quite like it's nowadays, if you listen to it, it's very comical, actually. And it romanticizes nationalism and also the party, the Ba'ath Party. And every word in that anthem is ironic when you know the truth, when you listen to the words, and then it's really, really funny. But I can imagine it as a soundtrack to some parts of my book. Do you like to listen to it?
Sure. Maybe people can take the time to think of questions while we listen to it.
Yes, exactly.
We don't have to listen to all of it, maybe a minute and a half or 2 minutes or something like that. Very interesting, I think. It's like a real relic. I've posted it on the chat.
Yes, you posted it on the public chat, yeah. I can see it.
When I was a child and when Yeah, we don't need, oops, can you hear me? Yeah, I really love this song because I always think if there was like a soundtrack, I mean, I'd like to make a soundtrack to that book, but that's one of them, because when I was a child, we heard that song all the time and we were really into it. But now I look at it and I think it's very catchy, but the words are, I mean, there's two sides. One of it is talking about Syria like many countries, when you love as a woman, as if she's a woman, which is, and Syria doesn't have that quality of being, many countries do. I mean, France, the Netherlands, so you really get that feeling in Syria. And I describe that in the book that you feel that Syria is a woman, the land is a woman. But then, the love of the land is very present in the song, but then you get this reference to the Ba'ath Party, who's kind of restoring freedom and giving people back their dignity. And then you think, oh, are you really? So it's like using people's love of their land to then hijack it with all this propaganda in the song. And also, I think all these rockets flying around are referring to the war, the Golan War, where the Syrians, I don't think they won. Maybe they didn't lose or they didn't win, but they portray themselves as if they're winning, and they're not. So that also makes you laugh. It's quite, in a way, it's a little bit tragic, but there's a delusional quality to the song. And a little bit childlike, all these rockets, like as if the more rockets you shoot, the more powerful you are.
Yeah, because it's I think it's, as you said, like the nation is feminized, and then there's all this military masculinity of, like, you know, the patriots who are defending, who are men, of course, and who are defending the land, who is you know, feminized, and so it's a weird combination of like calling the land Habibati, like as if it was a poetry, a poem, right? My love, and then at the same time like calling for war, and yeah, I mean it's very timely, and this, as you said, like happened all over. I don't know, not all over the world, but in many countries. But yeah,
that's true.
Looking
Very
at it from nowadays is like, ooh. Sorry, Suha.
No, it's patriarchal countries. We know it. It's normal so far. Maybe it may change.
Yeah, but it's fun because the book is set in the era of that song. So I thought it was an interesting song to kind of, I mean, there's a lot of very amazing songs, but this is, you know, since it's the national anthem. And like you said, the land is feminized. But the land itself, I mean, a lot of ancient goddesses and gods were all there. So there is something very feminine about the land that can't be denied. But yes, if there are any questions.
Yeah,
then,
questions, please, from the audience. You know, Rana, I'm going to buy this book. Can we have it on an e-book?
It is, yes, it can be ordered on Amazon as an e-book. Yeah.
Okay, I prefer ebook because maybe sometimes we can go on the links to listen to the music at the same time.
That's it. Yeah, you can do that.
So no questions?
If you have a question, Suha, you're welcome to ask a question.
Oh, I wanted to come back to Kulthum when you said the brothers were trying to I don't know, to be able to sing. She had to dress up like a boy. So which means ideology. Money has no ideology. Huh?
Yes, when they started making money, then they
no problem. But I didn't know that story, you know.
No, I didn't know that. Yeah. I only read it last year. I bought a book called "I Loved You for Your Voice." I don't know if
I've read it. Yeah.
I only read it last year, and it's fictionalized. It's from the man who wrote most of the songs. It's written from his point of view, but fictionalized. Yeah. And he tells the story of how he met her the first time, but he thought she was a boy. He saw this young man. Yeah. And he fell in love with the young man, and he was very taken aback. But then he discovered that it was a woman.
Amazing. I didn't know that. And I was really astonished to say that. And her father was an imam, you know, and it seems means the money has no ideology. So go and sing and bring the money.
But I think what they did to make themselves accepted was that she had to dress very modestly. Yeah. And also I think that was in the book, and maybe it was in real life, that her mother, before she was born, had a dream telling her that the child who will be born will be different about
Mm.
So they were somehow treating her as an exception, that she's, they had a vision from God that this child is different. She's not just any girl, she has a gift. And they somehow were able to,
That's interesting, really interesting. But Asmahan, I know her life was she lived a free life, libertine.
But she was from class. She was like a upper class.
Yeah, she was upper class. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but it's true that some.
Yes,
Sorry,
please.
sorry.
No. Okay, go ahead, please. It's
No, I was just going to say that I think that sometimes the upper class has also more constraints in terms of like how you need to behave. And actually Asmahan had, she did have that kind of life in Egypt, but precisely because of that, her relatives in Syria, among the Druze community, were opposing her very, very harshly. And she kind of went back and married her cousin, but then divorced, and so she would go back to Egypt, but she also tried to negotiate this pressure because precisely she came from the Atrash clan, and so she was expected not to have such a libertine life, as you said.
Yeah.
Yes, one of her relatives, I don't know if it's her grandfather, was the Al-Atrash, who was the revolutionary against the French, actually, wasn't he?
I think he was in the military. Some in her family, there was a general in her family, I think.
Yeah.
Asmahan. Yeah.
And you're right, actually, the Druze are very conservative, even if she was upper class. Yeah.
I think everybody is conservative in this area of the world.
It's true. Well, in the book, it's like everyone's conservative, but certain people will do what they want anyway.
Yeah.
And that's always been the case, and it's always interesting to hear the stories, these people who do whatever they want, regardless.
Anyway. Exactly. We don't want to monopolize the discussion. If there are questions, please do, because it will be more interesting to have the guests' questions.
Exactly. If anyone prefers to write their question in the public chat, we can read it out loud. Maybe people are a bit shy to ask the question, but
and anyway, our discussion will be on the YouTube channel of the school. And if after they have some questions, they can send us an email, and I will send it to you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Okay. I wanted to ask Rana, how would she compare now that you are living some time here in Greece, do you see any similarities in the way of culture, or is it something that feels familiar to you here as, like in Syria, like something that fills your heart with like same kind of feeling?
Yes, absolutely. Like, it's incredible, really. The feeling that I have here is almost as if I am in there. I mean, there are differences, many differences, but the feeling you have, the energy, the atmosphere, the way the people are, the way they interact, the faces, their perception of life is very, very, very similar. It's incredible. I never thought, I don't know, I just didn't imagine that in Europe, because I think Greece is very Eastern. Also Western, but there's something very East. I mean, it's a Southern European country, So it is a little bit like Italy and Spain, where there are also lots of similarities, because Syria is on the Mediterranean. But it's more than that. It has that extra edge of being very Eastern. And that's an amazing thing. And there are similarities, even, for example, in the type of food and coffee. You know, the Greek coffee and the Arabic coffee and the Turkish, they're all the same. The sweets. And there's a lot of faces. Like, I often meet people here, and I think I've met them before because they look, you know, physically similar to people that I've grown up with in Syria, especially because in Syria also there's a lot of intermixing, I think, because 10% of the population are Greek Orthodox Christians. And, you know, at some point, you know, that whole area was Byzantine. They were always mixing, basically. There's a lot of intermixing over time. And the rituals and traditions and even the buildings, when you go into a building, you know, like you ring the bell and the tiles, the windows, the plants, a lot of things, even the way some people dress, the way the house smells if you enter a home, it's very similar. Also to Lebanon, of course, Beirut, the plants, the flowers, everything. I feel really at home. It's amazing, an amazing feeling. Also, the generosity. The Greeks, very, very generous, and in quite a similar way.
Yes.
And also, maybe, I mean, I haven't gone deep into Greek society, but I think there is also a level of conservatism, and maybe people interfering in each other's lives that's a little bit stronger than it would be in a Western European, you know, because the communities are very strong here still. The parents and the grandparents still have a lot of influence on the children, and you know, and so that creates a lot of it gives you a lot of warmth and support, and also, but there's a lot of opportunity for, you know, controlling, and also for humor and memories and all kinds of things.
Yeah,
Greece also was under the Ottomans, and Syria was also under the Ottomans.
exactly.
I think there's a lot of you know, lines.
Lot of wording, lot of wordings, words we have from the Ottoman, even
Yeah.
in Lebanon
Yeah.
and Syria and Greece, we still use the same the Ottoman words.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, the Ottomans themselves were built upon the Byzantines, who were Greek, Hellenic. You know,
Yeah.
so it's all layers of layers.
Mm,
Yes.
that's true.
Yeah.
I was just speaking to the monk from Rhodes, who is from Crete.
Mhm.
And I was saying to him that about your book, because I was somewhere else and I came back to my office now. That's why you saw me disappear, because I was trying to be, you know, like with them, because it happened. So I was telling him about your book, and he was telling me, oh, you know, we were in Jerusalem in the Holy Sepulchre Church, and we had to go to Syria because we have the Syrian are in the Holy Sepulchre. There's like monks and priests from Syria, and they do the liturgy in Aramaic, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is the original, the language that Christ was speaking, the Aramaic, you know. And he was like so happy to know about your book. And he says, is this book translated in Greek? I
Not
said,
yet.
I don't know. I said, I don't think so yet, you know. But I wish, maybe I can get, I have a friend here who has a publishing, two friends publishing houses. We need to talk about that. If you haven't, maybe to be translated in Greek.
That would be wonderful. I would love that.
Yes,
Yeah.
before I go next week, we have to do that too.
Yeah, that would be, because a Greek publisher did contact my agent last year, and then nothing happened. I mean, they just emailed them, and then nothing happened. But I think it would be nice if it's in Greek and Spanish, because I think, I mean, it is a story set in Syria, but it's a universal story.
Yes,
And
yes,
Greeks and Spanish people and French, I mean, everyone would be able to identify with elements
yes.
of it.
There's so many similarities, like we're all mixed together here.
I think we really are mixed together.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
much closer than we think we are. Yeah.
We are closer than we think, you know. I mean,
Yes, Bettina.
so amazing. You know, I'm really very grateful that, you know, I met you too, and it's so wonderful. And all of the women and men, whoever is on the here, but we're so blessed to have all of this. It's like a gift every day, waking up and having this.
Yes. No, it was really amazing to have met you as well. I
Same
feel
here,
really-
ladies. Thank you.
And Suha, and we all try to be all, you know.
and thank you, Suha, for having the book presented on your platform.
Oh, please, it was a pleasure and a really lovely book. And we are going to post it on our this conversation. It will be posted on the YouTube channel and on Facebook page. And I want to encourage people to buy this book.
And I hope both Suha and Itzeya that you both come to Athens at some point when all this lockdown
We are
is-
coming. I am coming in spring with Martina.
Oh,
Yes,
good.
and
We meet.
Yes.
you can all go to the island at the house that I have there. You can stay
Yeah.
there. I hope maybe I can come.
So you have to come.
Yes, so Itzeya will come and we'll meet the four of us.
Amazing.
But if I
Amazing.
don't come, you can always go there. Artemis has the key, so you're welcome to go. I went yesterday. It was amazing. The weather, warm, the grass, green, the trees, the birds, the sea, and it was so amazing. The sky. I'm so glad. I got
Martina,
to go.
stop it, please. Stop it.
No,
We
it
know
was a
Greece is a
miracle.
paradise on earth.
It was a miracle to be allowed to go on the boat because there is no COVID on the island. And, you know, like I had to sneak on the boat, and I was praying to Saint Nectarios, and he created this miracle for me to be sneaking in the boat. It was so funny. I think I
We have to hear
write
about
that story. I have to write that story on Facebook.
I think you
I
should.
sneaked away yesterday. Because that's the island of Saint Nectarios. He's a very famous saint. He's the saint of the 20th century. And he went through many problems, the poor saint, you know. And, you know, thousands of people come from all over the world to worship in the island of Aegina, Saint Nectarios. So, you know, I was praying that they allow me on the boat. And it was like a confusion. And I got on the boat.
You have to write it down.
Comical, tragic situation. Just thinking of it, how it happened, I was like laughing. I sneaked right on the boat. The guy goes, "Your COVID paper," and then another lady comes, and then I went up the stairs.
You're like Dunya Noor, a rebel.
Crazy. Anyway, I'm happy I went and I came back.
Good.
I hope the COVID will be gone when you come, so you can go there.
We will
Yes.
go this spring. I'm sure it will be over, all this
Oh,
COVID.
I hope so. I hope so.
And then Itzeya will fly over to Athens.
Yes.
Yeah,
We will try to come.
Where is it?
I'm based in Barcelona now. So you're also welcome. This is also a very beautiful city.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, Barcelona is beautiful. I came there like 3 years ago to a naturopathic conference because I'm a naturopath. And it was the international conference on naturopathic medicine. So
Right.
it was beautiful, the city. It's so beautiful. That was my first time. You're really fortunate.
أهلا وسهلا. Everyone welcome.
Thank you. Itzaya, where are you originally from?
I'm Basque.
Basque?
Yeah.
Spain? Spanish
Mhm.
Basque or French?
Yeah. Spanish. Yeah.
Spanish.
Yeah.
But she's fluent in Arabic. It's amazing.
Really? That's why I asked her, because she was talking in Arabic.
She studied it and learnt it, and she speaks it really well. Yes. She says things like,
Okay, so if we don't have any question, maybe we can wrap up, and we can speak sometimes, the four of us,
yes,
privately.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, ladies. It was really interesting, and it created a little bit of nostalgia in me while seeing this and hearing these songs. Really beautiful. Thank you, Rana. Thank you, Itzaya. Thank you, Martina. Martina, maybe you should do a webinar on naturopathy.
yes.
Okay. Maybe
We want
Very soon.
We want
Thank
to
you,
attend-
Suha, for having us.
Please, it was a pleasure.
We will do something.
Yes,
Thank
dear.
you so much.
Maybe we can speak sometimes. Okay.
Sending
Okay.
you love.
Ciao, ciao.
All of you love.
Thank you, Rafael. Thank you, Rafael, for
Thank you
everything.
very much, Rafael.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye. Have a nice evening.
You too.
Bye.